Hello, everyone. Again, I am Cindy Mumford. I am the president of the Block Club. And what the Block Club, the BC Block Club. And what we did was a collective group of residents in Ward 7. We started a block club, which was pretty simple to do so that we can engage and empower ourselves to position us into the solar industry. And if you look on my screen, you can see that the solar industry's projection of revenue is growing and is estimated to reach a $223 billion by 2026. And even in the midst of the COVID pandemic, it may have slowed down a little bit, but it is still on the path for growth. And so as a community of working class people, our community is very diverse. We have young people in the community. We have homeowners, we have renters. And we generally work, most of us work and have other jobs, or we are in school or have our own businesses. So it is very interesting for you to get to know, it is very empowering for you to get to know your neighbors. And just from the seminar that I just left, a few people can make great change. So we came together and we wanted to know, how can we position ourselves to take advantage of this $223.3 billion industry that's coming forth, not only for ourselves today, but for our heirs, meaning our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and so on, because generally we live in an area that has been deprived of development and growth, but we want to change our economic footprint. So we want to be able to say that our net worth has grown collectively as we participate in this industry. Thank you. And Jonathan, I'm so happy you joined this call. If you would like to give a bit introduction, Jonathan has been, he's the owner of Cleveland Owns, and he has been very instrumental in working with the BC to organize itself and to make this project a reality. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hey all, I'm Jonathan Welly. I use he, him pronouns. I work at Cleveland Owns, as Cindy mentioned. Hi Cindy, good to see you. As if we don't spend enough time on Zoom together. Get a little bonus Friday round, I like that. That's right. So I'm here based in the city, and Cleveland Owns is basically an incubator for cooperative businesses. And one of the projects we've been working on for about 2 years is supporting Cindy's group and the BC as an advisor, as a consultant, as they navigate this long and complex process of starting community-owned community solar in Cleveland, which, by the way, would be the first community-owned community solar in the state of Ohio, which is very exciting. Yeah. Yeah, and so, you know, I live in Larchmere. I grew up in the eastern suburbs, and what my community needs, if you ask me, is a more democratic economy, is a way for people. You know, we practice democracy at least through voting, which is kind of a nominal form of democracy. But for most people, 9 to 5 is not a democratic time of day at all, right? You're in hierarchical organizations, very top down. And we're trying to change that by changing who owns what, how decisions get made. We're doing that through cooperative ownership, and very excited to be here today, support this group and learn with you all.
So we're going to start off with just a little brief introduction about our project. Let me see if I can switch screens again. And Jonathan, I'm so happy you're here because you do such a great job of explaining instead of me. So we're going to try to just give you a little bit of information about to address, you know, I agree with you, the young lady that spoke, that a lot of people think that solar is expensive and that is ugly. You know, some people don't like the aesthetic looks of solar on their homes. So this is why our virtual net metering project is maybe so much appealing to groups and other people, because they can buy into this ownership. And this project, because it's virtual solar, so you'll have we're going for 8 acres. So we'll have 8 acres of solar in designated in the city of Cleveland, where there's kind of like brownfield, we would say, and that people can tap into it from anywhere. So that means that you don't have to be linked. You don't have to have a wire or something connecting your house directly to the solar array itself. So Jonathan, while I'm trying to fumble around to pull up my other screen, if you could just do a little bit more about the virtual net metering part.
Sure. Yeah. Like once you get into the solar world, like you'll find like a whole forest of acronyms and detailed policy things, which can be a little daunting, particularly if you're new to this. So try to do justice to it. If you put solar panels on your roof, it's called net metering, right? And so you actually get every kilowatt hour that gets produced on your roof, you get a credit on your bill, and your bill gets reduced by the equivalent amount of dollars based on how many kilowatt hours the panel produced. In community solar, it's a little bit different. Community solar is as if everyone went to their roof, took those panels off the roof, walked them down the street together to an empty lot, and laid them next to one another. And so I still have one panel, and my neighbor has the panel next to it, and my other neighbor has the panel next to that one. And so those panels are connected directly into the grid, into the local utility grid, so it ties into the wires. It's not connected to your house, but on your bill, you still get the credits as if those panels were on the roof. And that's what differentiates community solar from rooftop solar. Rooftop solar is called net metering. Community solar is called virtual net metering. It's virtually net metering because it's not actually tied, but you still get the credits. It's not physically tied, but you still get the credits. So it's kind of an accounting trick that is really successful. So all over the country, more than a dozen states have very large and extensive community solar programs. One example is Minnesota. There are over 12,500 people, households, who have subscribed to these community solar gardens. So they get money, they get credit on their bill every month. And we hope to bring that to Ohio. It's a way to more efficiently install solar. So, heard Alexa, I think you mentioned that people felt like solar was expensive. It can be expensive if you're installing on 50 different roofs. But if instead of installing on 50 different roofs, you're actually only installing in one plot of land, you get some economies of scale. And so it's much more affordable. And it also opens the opportunity for community ownership. So if you have panels on your roof, you probably own those panels. But as you can imagine, many people, if you're a renter, your roof is not ready for solar, you can't put panels on your roof. You have trees, if your roof is too shaded. So community solar is a way for people who rent or have a roof that's not ready for solar to actually own some solar and see those benefits of solar. And there's a real racial component here too, which is worth pointing out. In Northeast Ohio, 3 out of 4 white households own a home, which makes it much easier to install panels on your roof. Among Black families, rates of home ownership is just about 1 in 3, which is to say 2 out of 3 Black households in Northeast Ohio do not own a home. So how are they going to participate in solar if the only option is rooftop solar? They're not able to do so. So we see community solar as a racial equity tool to make access to solar, more affordable and more accessible.
Thank you, Jonathan. And so let's just get into how we started. As I mentioned before, we were just a group of, before COVID-19, we interacted, pretty much a lot with each other as neighbors. And we were sitting around talking about how we can there have been some investment into our neighborhood, but we wanted to see more. So you have a very mixed group of housing. Some of the houses are newer that have been built, like my house was built in the 90s. And then we have some houses that have been here for more than 100 years old, and some of them almost 100 years old. So you have a very mixed housing stock. And then, so we got together as neighbors. We formed our block club. Once we did the block club, what we did we are not a cooperative yet. We formed the BC Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization that we use to form ourselves and structure ourselves so that we could move forward with our mission. This is our mission statement. Our mission statement, the specific purpose of the corporations, we're just working together to build a safe, economically stable, and beautiful community. I mean, that's it. And then also, we just want to be safe. We want to be able to walk around in our neighborhoods and see how we can, walk in a beautiful. If you've ever been around to the art museum and all the renovations like that, why can't we have that same type of beautifications or something similar enhanced in our neighborhood as well? So that's part of our mission statement. This is our team. Right now, I'm the president of the BC, and the secretary is Deborah Lewis, who lives across the street from me. And then it's the community residents, those 50 people that live in our house, live in our community. So the committee, we have different committees in our block club, and each committee has a mission on what they are part and how we're going to reach our goal. So we have the BC, which is a 501c3. We have the Sustainability Committee, which is driving the project for the community solar project or community garden, solar garden. We also have a beautification committee, a safety committee, business development committee, an education committee, and a health and wellness committee. So discussions related to virtual net metering would involve the following regulatory entities. Does anybody have any questions about that or what that looks like? I just want to make sure that people are coming along as I'm speaking, and we're going to tie all this in together. Any questions about this? What I would like to know is what mechanism or tool would you use to organize your school, your community, or your family into a project that you may find a commitment for people to participate to make change in this environment? What, just if you want to chime in, I'd like to hear voices. So again, and you can pass if you like to, and I don't like to bring people in. You can tell me if you want to about what you would use to, what mechanism or tool or how, or what resources would you need to form an active group in your community, school, or residence if you were to impact in any type of change. All right, Jonathan, we're going to start with you.
Which Jonathan?
Oh, Jonathan Welly.
Okay.
Hey all, yep, I would want to make sure I track the question. I'm sorry, I just took a quick call, which was that how to organize, right? How to organize a neighborhood and community.
Yeah, what mechanism would you use or what tool to use to organize?
Yeah, right. So there's kind of, that's hard. It's a fun challenge. You know, there's online versus there's in person. Normally in person, I think is a lot more powerful, but online is kind of our best option in many ways right now. I mean, for me, when I think about organizing, I think about finding the interests and values in yourself and being really clear about that, and finding the interests and values in your neighbors, the people that you work with at work, at school. And that's, for me, kind of the basis for how to build a relationship together. And it's through, I think, those relationships that folks are able to make progress. And so, you know, when I think, Cindy, about what you've done with your neighbors, I mean, you all have at the foundation of your group really deep long-term relationships, right? And through those relationships, you've been able to explore together what ties you together, what vision you have for your community. And that process, it's a lot of one-on-one conversations. It's a lot of house meetings, you know, formerly house meetings, now Zoom meetings. And it's a lot of, you know, consensus building. And I've seen you all do that, really well in Hough through the BC. And when I think back on other campaigns I've been a part of, I was on the Obama campaign, part of the Clash Coalition last year, part of the GCC group that petitioned against the Q deal. The common denominator to all those efforts are people coming together around a shared set of interests, their values, things that they learned as children and practiced as adults, things that they really care about. And that's kind of when I've been most excited and seen the most promising organizing.
Thank you. So John, the other Jonathan?
Yeah. I don't know if I have a ton of original things to add to that, but I guess in my experience in my neighborhood, I live in Cadell. The biggest barrier, I think, to organizing people here, but also like the most critical component, is just kind of establishing a baseline level of trust among people and just basic lines of communication. I think a challenge in Cadell, and which is probably shared by a lot of neighborhoods in Cleveland that have seen varying levels of disinvestment, is just there isn't much of a social framework in place, and a lot of people don't know each other, and a lot of people are very siloed off. And so to actually be able to leverage, relationships and actually have some type of like community, power, whether that's like purchasing power and the ability to develop a project of this scale, is really just to even have lines of communication open between people. And I think it's really tough to actually establish those when there's been sort of, generations of that communication breaking down. There's a lot to overcome, I think. So I think that's what where I see a lot of power lies, is just being able to actually form relationships with a lot of people.
Thank you. Let's go down the line. Would anyone else like to speak or to share? Let me get back to that. Anyone else?
I can share. So I help run a couple of different political groups in my community. And one, we've had a lot of success with having our meetings at public places so that people see us and are kind of like, oh, what are they doing, right? Mm-hmm. We'll have it at the public library or even in like a side room at the local pizza shop. Again, just to like raise our visibility within the community. And then we've also been doing a lot of, especially during COVID, but even before, postcard writing. So we'll do like a postcard writing party where we get our members and volunteers together and we send postcards to our neighbors to encourage them to come to our next meeting or to come to an event that we're hosting.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you everyone for sharing. I hope that after this presentation that you may be able to take pieces or parts of this this template that we are formatting, and hopefully we can collaborate together as well to start a project, be it solar or something else that you want to impact change with. So, with the net metering, or virtual net metering, our solar system, this is the size of our project has changed. So it has evolved from 3.1 acres to 8 acres. And this is like I said, I hate to use the word pilot because pilot is non-committal, but it is a template to be used throughout Northeastern Ohio so that we'll be able to show how we're going to bring the dollars of that project back into the neighborhoods to make it better. And those dollars will be controlled by the people that own the community solar. So we're hoping that this model will go toward things that we want to see, shoring up our housing stock so that it's worth value, which will improve our net worth collectively as a community. In addition, we want these dollars to go toward beautifications of our neighborhoods because a lot of us are working and we do not qualify for a lot of the programs, okay? So we're hoping that this is how we want to utilize the dollars to come back into the households to shore up our housing stock through beautification, landscaping, housing repairs, weatherization, and education as well. And so what we had to pull, a lot of people came around to support us. We had first a small neighborhood grant. We had the help of the Legal Aid Society, and Jonathan was able to pull in some other resources from Cleveland State, some attorneys to help us put together our resources. So where would you be able to go if you want to start on this mission to organizing and finding revenue to get you off the ground? We started off with an IOB fundraiser where we raised approximately $3,000 or something like that, so that we could just start with the grassroots of organizing ourselves, getting our articles of corporation, getting the assistance of an attorney to help us do that, to get us started. And we had the commitment of the community as a whole. So that was very, very important. So, so in this model, the utility, all consumers will need to be with the same distributing company. So we have verbal commitments that we will do as what we need to do, because we are split. Half of us are CPP, Cleveland Public Power, and then half of us are on the illuminating company. So we, in order for this to make this work, we will have to switch and become part of CPP and what that would look like. So First Energies is governed by the Utilities Commission, and CPP is governed by our city council. So it's more locally governed, okay? So the financeability, the community solar garden financing difficult within the states like Ohio, preference for large, high credit-worthy counterparties to backstop the majority project offtake. So what we've also done was, so in order to make this work, we have to engage the other stakeholders. We were in conversations with the Cleveland Clinic, other large businesses around us to be off-takers, the Cleveland Foundation and other entities to be off-takers, so that this would make financial sense, okay? So the project itself was estimated to cost about $2.5 million. The developer that that we're working with has agreed to, or put itself in a position where that they would provide all of the upfront capital, which means that the block club members or the block club entity itself would not see any revenue from the project for several years with this type of financial model. So we're in the process of right now negotiating what that model looks like, so that we can raise capital through either grant funding or some other sources, so that we can have more of an investment in the upfront capital stack, so that we can receive revenue sooner. And but the problem is that tax credits are involved with this. Because of the solar projects, there's a tax credit component that has an appetite for developers. So in order for that to work, that means that the for-profit entity, which is people with the money bags, I call them, will have to own the project for about, I think it's 7 years, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, 7 years before we could see benefits. So we're working on changing that model a little bit, and the developer that we're working with and the other stakeholders like the Gun Foundation, the Cleveland Foundation, Cleveland owns, the city, another local development corporation, we're working together to change that model, because we found out in history and through Lynn's group, what I want to give some shout outs to Lynn's group, we're able to show that that model doesn't always benefit grassroots organizations like ourselves, that financial model doesn't always work. So we're looking at creating something different. So that's what we're working with. That's what we're doing now. And what that means is that the BC will come up with some funds. So far, we have a potential for a $500,000 grant with the Cleveland Foundation to see if we can translate that model to help us to invest sooner versus the latter part of the project, instead of receiving revenues at the end of the 7 years, okay? So, and hard numbers right now, these are just placeholder numbers. So but hard numbers right now won't be determined until we have the site control and we have a lot more, but these are numbers that we're using as projections. So the size of the system that we have right now, this is one of the first areas that we looked at. This was outside of a school at Martin Luther King School, which is sadly closing, but they had about 3.1 acres because we want part of the project to be in the community as inspiration, motivation, hope, and vision creating. So we want to be able to show that this is something substantial, okay, that the community can buy into and own, and to create revenue. I keep going back to that word, revenue, okay? So the third party ownership VI, the power purchase agreement, which we will have to have with CPP. The capital stack includes tax equity for the investors, sponsor equity, debt, gross revenue of about $105,000 a year. This is based on the old model with projected numbers, okay? So these numbers are not concrete and they are continue to be in negotiation. So as we're creating this pilot, we'll be able to negotiate more firm numbers. Jonathan, do you want to add anything to this?
Sure, I can build on that. I mean, it's a complex scenario, right? It's a $3 million project, so there's a lot of moving pieces. It's tough to boil it down to, you know, a quick presentation. I mean, the tax equity component introduces a lot of complexity, and you know, you don't really need to think about or worry about that until we get far down the road. I think one of the things that, I mean, meaning people who are hearing this for the first time, you know, if you're thinking about doing a project, it's not something you need to worry about. I think that one of the most compelling things that Cindy, you know, the team has done in the BC is really like find how to bring together neighbors in a powerful way. And I guess, Cindy, I was going to ask, I was wondering, I'm hoping to hear from you kind of like how you all have managed to do that, right? To bring neighbors around this idea, kind of an idea that might be even new for some people, and keep people excited and engaged about something like this, and kind of help them find the energy that you feel around the vision for that. So I don't know if now's the right time, Cindy, but that's a question that I was hoping to ask you.
Sure. You know, the way that we keep our neighbors involved, neighbors and friends, we're more like family. We keep them, is that we communicate with each other. We communicate with each other and we're transparent. We, you know, we have meetings to update via Zoom. We used to do it over like in our backyards or at porch thing, nothing very, very informal. But it is so important that you develop relationships within your community and outside of your community as support. And even this form that we're using today to become part of this initiative will help in the future as you galvanize and organize yourselves for future projects. So as we support each other, that's the way that we move things forward. And this is about also the business of solar itself. How do we position ourselves to take part of this $2.2 $223 billion industry that's coming part of the that's going to be part of the industry or these projections. How are we going to, because we always get left out as communities. We don't have a voice. If you heard Stephanie Hough this morning, we don't have a voice at the sitting table where they make these legislative decisions that only involves a few powerful, rich people instead of grassroots organizations and communities like ourselves.